the Chase Thomas Podcast, for people who have nothing but time to kill.
Situations where he can just pin his ears back and rush. And if they can do that, I think they've got a good chance to make it at least a shootout and, make it close, and anything could happen from there.
You talked about the defense. That's just been an issue. Obviously, Go Long TD, friend of the pod, Ty Dunn, he did a really good piece on this defense, and highly encourage folks to go read Go Long TD, one of the best independent NFL blogs out there. And it's something that I thought was really fascinating. It's just that, like, what this season could have been if you don't bring back Joe Barry. Do you think about that a lot, of like if you made a change before this year because you've seen Jordan Love make the jump and these receivers start to get more comfortable with how young they are, that, like, man, do you think they win the division potentially? Like, is this a team that's in the top 3 in the NFC if they even get a league average defensive coordinator to replace Barry this past offseason?
I think they could. I mean, they're 6th in offensive DVOA right now. I don't know exactly where the Lions finished, but it can't be too much higher than that.
Yeah.
The defense folding in multiple situations, allowing, like, their game against Tommy DeVito was embarrassing, and how easy things were for him. Their game against the Panthers was embarrassing, although I did think Bryce Young hit some money throws that you got to give him a lot of credit for in that one, more than DeVito did. But yeah, I definitely think about it a lot. Barry is someone who's never really had a ton of success anywhere that he's been as the defensive coordinator. In fact, Green Bay is by far his most successful stop in terms of, points allowed and yards allowed, which is bad, right? So
yeah,
they wanted someone from that not from that Shanahan tree, that Fangio tree, who is kind of working in LA when they won the Super Bowl, that puts too high and works the split field safety stuff. That's a part of that world, just like they were trying to be on the cutting edge of the offensive side of it with the Shanahan stuff and hiring LaFleur. This was kind of the defensive answer, but that tree kind of get picked thin. And Joe Barry is someone that, wasn't necessarily, I think, the best guy to hire, even though they did want a certain defensive scheme. And yeah, I would definitely be interested in seeing this team with a guy like Wink Martindale, who is, man coverage on the back end and send the blitz. Like, I feel like Green Bay has a lot of good players in Kenny Clark and Rashawn Gary and Jair Alexander. But they just played dumb, and they never quite got a good handle on, like, what they were supposed to be doing. It felt like in zone coverage, and made a lot of mistakes and a lot of stunts in the up front that caused confusion more for themselves than the offense. So yeah, I think about it too much, probably.
I wonder too, like, could they have done better? Like, is there a name that you would have liked that they were maybe linked to? Is it a LaFleur issue? Like, are we sure that Barry's out after this year? Is that something you worry about? Is that, like, there is a loyalty there that maybe he continues to bring him back? Like, I don't know. I wonder on that front too for LaFleur.
Yeah, I definitely think about that. I mean, I think at midseason there was a point where they could have pulled the trigger on firing Barry. I think last year they could have pulled the trigger on firing Barry. Now they've made the playoffs after holding the Vikings and the Bears to, a limited number of points. And if they get first rounded, like, maybe Barry has done enough. But and I don't think Barry's job is absolutely, like, if they bring him back because they go on a run this postseason and, like, the defense is a huge part of it, there's a limit on how mad you can really be. But if Dak Prescott drops 40 on them and they don't fire Barry, that I think that would be a bit unserious. And yeah, I do think that it's a possibility that they don't, because they've had reason to before, when they didn't make the playoffs, and this year they are there. So who knows what'll happen.
Well, it feels like the scrutiny too is just a lot because the Packers have been so defense heavy in the top of their drafts. Like, they've just drafted so many guys on defense and early in the draft. Like, that's just been their focus and you just kind of obviously there's been some hilarious Quay Walker moments there, but I mean, by and large, they've drafted pretty well. It's just when you accumulate or when you invest so much on that side of the ball, you expect the defense to be better than what it is because you've just allocated so many resources to that side of the ball early in the draft.
Definitely. And it's all front seven too. Like, with all of those resources, like, the safety position was still a liability going into this year. And like, you're a defense that's supposed to limit big plays by putting a shell on everything. But if your safeties are bad, like that shell is terrible, like it can be easily broken. So you're taking resources out of the run game, putting them in the back end, and then the back end is messing it up anyway. I think that was such a big problem. And then this year, I guess it has gotten maybe a little better, but they didn't add any safety or anything like that this year. They just added Van Ness, who came in as a kind of a rotational guy and was fine. But like, what did that piece really give you this year? And that's kind of always been the Packers' MO, is like they don't really draft for need so much. I feel like they kind of just go with a freakish talent in the trenches. Like that's kind of always been their thing, is like who lights up the combine. How can we make like the biggest, strongest, fastest defense possible with a linebacker or defensive lineman? And they are an athletic defense, but they just played dumb this year and they weren't sound on the back end.
Switching gears a little bit, Theo. You get a lot of flack and a lot of attention for your Tua Tagovailoa thoughts.
I do.
What were your thoughts about Tua and the Miami Dolphins just fumbling away? Home field advantage. What's been mostly a special season for Miami, a breakthrough year. Tyreek Hill right there in the MVP conversation. Jalen Waddle having a great year. I mean, it seemed like everything was coming together for the Dolphins to maybe even come out of the AFC. Like number one seed was on the table, and then life came at them fast. And obviously the bad pick late. I mean, where are you at with Tua going into the postseason and maybe going into next year? And how much has your thoughts changed about Miami over the last couple of weeks?
Zero is how my thoughts have changed about Tua. I think that Tua is in the tier with Jared Goff, and at the low end, Jimmy Garoppolo, and he was on the 49ers. Like, he's good. He executes the system well. He gets the ball out of his hands quickly. Like, his release is really special. The way he can layer the ball in there is pretty special too. But at the end of the day, you see a guy like Josh Allen who can go out and get you a bucket. No.
Go. Nicely done, nephew. The Chase Thomas podcast. Hell yeah.